Reduced relative clauses. This is an advanced grammar topic which I'm going to explain to you step by step. And relative clauses are also called adjective clauses. Same thing. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to first review relative pronouns and relative clauses. Because if you don't feel confident with relative clauses, you can't reduce them. Then we'll look at reduced relative clauses. If you feel confident with relative clauses and want to skip the review, just go here in my lesson. Skip ahead. I'll see you there. For everyone else, stay with me. And I know you're going to need practice. So I have a test for you with 10 questions. Can you please let me know your score in the comments? Did you get 10 correct out of 10? Or maybe just 6 correct out of 10? Let me know. My name's Arnell. Let's start. I want to begin with a general overview. Right now, you do not need to understand the grammar. I just want to start giving you the feeling. The woman who is sitting by the window is our CEO. Any luggage that is left unattended will be removed. This book, which I bought yesterday, is already falling apart. And falling apart is a phrasal verb which means something is getting old and doesn't stay together. Here, this book is falling apart. My shoes are falling apart. I'll return the jacket that you left at my place. And my place means my house. Each sentence has a relative pronoun. The relative pronoun is the head of the relative clause. The relative clause describes a noun. We are describing woman, luggage, book, and jacket. See, this is why relative clauses are also called adjective clauses. Adjectives describe nouns. Adjective clauses describe nouns. We can reduce the first sentence. The woman sitting by the window is the CEO. We can reduce the second sentence. Any luggage left unattended will be removed. We cannot reduce sentence 3, and in sentence 4, we cannot reduce it, but we can remove that. What are the rules? Why? I'm going to explain everything. Relative pronouns. Relative pronouns who, which, that. But what about other relative pronouns like whose? When it comes to reduced relative clauses, whose is not relevant. We do not reduce whose clauses. So today, I'm not going to discuss that one. Who for people, which for things, and that for people or things. You can see that is more flexible. But is there a difference? Well, that is just less formal and more common in conversations. What about animals? For animals, we can use which or that. But sometimes pets are considered family, like people. So you might see who being used for pets, but that's not really so common. Subject, object. Defining relative clause, non-defining relative clause. We have a chart. You know I love charts. And you might be thinking, is all of this information necessary? Yes, it is. I'll start with who. Who can be the subject or object of your relative clause? Subject. I met a lady who works for the UN. and UN stands for United Nations. I have my relative clause, subject, and verb. Who is the subject because it does the action? The lady works for the UN. What's the name of the student who always sits at the back of the classroom? Relative clause, and subject, and verb. You can see who is the subject because it does the action. The student sits at the back of the classroom. Object. Okay, you can see I've added whom in parentheses. Why? Traditionally, whom is the object form for who and is technically the correct form. But in modern English, whom is rarely used. You'll usually only see it in very formal writing. That's why whom is in parentheses. For today's lesson, I'm going to use who because that's how I personally speak. But I just want you to know that for formal writing, whom is preferred. You choose. I have my relative clause. Who is the object? How do we know who is the object? Because my verb saw already has a subject, me. Someone who I barely know sent me flowers. How do I know who is the object? Because the verb of my clause, know, already has a subject, I. Subject, object, this can drive students crazy. See, here is one of my students after a subject-object lesson. There is no life left. But I have a trick that can help you. You know your relative pronoun is the subject of your clause when it is immediately followed by a verb. In this case, works. Here's the trick. You can replace who with another subject and the clause still works. Katrina works for the UN. I work for the UN. Everybody works for the UN. You know your relative pronoun is the object of your clause when it is immediately followed by a subject and verb. I mean, you can't have double subject. Subject, subject? Nope. Here are two sentences. Tell me if the relative pronoun is the subject or object. Pause the lesson. In sentence 1, who is the subject? Because we can see it's followed by a verb. And who in the second sentence is the object because it's followed by a subject and verb. We cannot have a double subject. Of course, there can be exceptions to all grammar rules, but I hope this trick helps you. What does defining relative clause mean? Defining. Well, think about defining like the word definition. You know, a definition gives you essential information about a word. So, a defining relative clause gives you essential information about a noun. Let me show you. Let's remove our defining relative clauses. I met a lady. That's nice, but who is this woman? Her? 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 Oh, I met a lady who worked for the UN. Now I have more information. Who works for the UN is giving me essential information. I cannot identify the noun without this information. What's the name of the student? Which student? There are like 50 students in the classroom. Sorry. What's the name of the student who always sits at the back of the classroom? Now it's clear. My relative clause gives me essential information. Without this information, I cannot identify the student. The girl looked familiar. Which girl? Who? Oh, the girl who we saw in the parking lot. Right. Now, it's clear. For the last one, you could be thinking, someone sent me flowers. It's a clear sentence. We are not being specific. Someone. Well, in this situation, it's important because the speaker wants to make it clear that this isn't just someone. It's strange that she sent me flowers. Defining relative clauses are essential. We cannot remove them. What's the opposite of defining relative clauses? You guessed it, non-defining relative clauses. My mom, who is half Chinese, learned English in her 20s. In her 20s means from the ages 20 to 29. Our principal, who turns 75 next week, is in the hospital. Angela, who I met during the conference, is a graphic designer. Our neighbor, who I've never spoken to, brought over this cake. The relative clauses here are non-defining, which means we don't need them to identify the noun. They are just there to give extra, interesting information. If I remove the relative clauses, we have no problem identifying the noun. I mean, I only have one mom. There is only one principal in the school. Angela is a specific woman's name. And in this last example, whether I've spoken to my neighbor or not doesn't identify this person. It's just interesting information because normally someone you've never spoken to doesn't bring you cake. Do you notice anything about the punctuation in defining and non-defining relative clauses? Right. Commas. Non-defining relative clauses are always separated by commas. I want you to think about it like this. The commas are like handles. You can hold them and remove the non-defining clause. The listener can still identify the noun. This is in writing. What about speaking? Well, clearly in speaking, you don't need commas, but a lot of times in a conversation for non-defining relative clauses, there's kind of a natural pause, like a comma. Okay, how are you feeling? Let's move on to which and that. The good news is we've already discussed all the grammar rules for this part. Now it's just time for examples. Can you pick up some light bulbs while you are out? I need ones which say E27 on the box. Which is the subject of the clause. It is part of a defining relative clause. If you remove it, you don't know what type of light bulb to buy. The email which I sent you last night has the updated schedule, which is the object of the clause. It's defining. I sent you lots of emails yesterday. If we remove this clause, you don't know which email I'm talking about. The old mansion, which was built sometime around 1920, is said to be haunted. A mansion is a large, expensive house, and haunted means has ghosts. Which is the subject? This is providing extra information. I have my commas. An antique mirror, which we found in the attic, turned out to be valuable. Which is the object? This is providing extra information. I have my commas. That. We know that is more versatile and informal. It can be used for people and things, so let me bring up some of my previous examples. You can see a mix of people and things. We can replace who or which with that. Same thing, just less formal. A lady that works. Light bulbs that say. Someone that I barely know. The email that I sent you last night. All good, all correct. But there is always a but. You cannot use that in a non-defining relative clause. Just think about it like this. No, that after a comma. Why? Because it sounds weird. That isn't used to introduce extra information. My mom, that is half Chinese? No. Maybe in an informal conversation, someone could say that, but it isn't correct. Let's keep going. I know there's been a lot of information in this lesson, so be sure to take the test to review. And if you want all of the notes for today's lesson, you can become a member and download all of these to study. I'll leave the link to join in the comments below. Okay, let's look at the top right-hand box. Here are all of the examples we looked at in this box. And I'll add one extra example. I'm wearing the same sweater that which I wore in my relative clause lesson a few years ago. I mean, this sweater is getting kind of old now, but I wanted my videos on the same topic to look consistent. If your relative pronoun is the object of a defining relative clause, you can remove it. Someone I barely know sent me flowers. The email I sent you last night. The girl we saw in the parking lot. I'm wearing the same sweater I wore in my lesson a few years ago. Perfectly correct, all good. Review time, mini review. Relative pronouns. Who describes people, possibly pets. Which describes things and animals. That describes people, things, animals. That is less formal and more common than who or which. Relative pronouns are the head of the relative clause. They can be the subject or the object of the relative clause. Relative clauses can be defining or non-defining. We also do not use that in a non-defining relative clause. Finally, if your relative pronoun is the object in a defining relative clause, it can be removed. I laughed so hard at the meme you sent me. Are you ready to look at reduced relative clauses? I'm ready. Finally, reduced relative clauses. Here we are. Let's go back to my chart. We can only reduce the relative clause if the relative pronoun is the subject of the clause. So we don't need the boxes on the right. And when I say reduce the clause, I don't mean just removing the relative pronoun. We looked at that earlier. That's different. Also, reduction usually only happens with defining relative clauses. So in my examples, I'll mainly use defining relative clauses. But you might see reduced clauses there's a lot of terminology here. Okay, you might see reduced relative clauses with non-defining relative clauses. So I'll give you a couple of those examples as well. Here's an important question. Why? What's the purpose of reducing relative clauses? Why do we need to do this? Reduced relative clauses are natural, concise, and often used in both formal writing and everyday conversation. So this is something you definitely need to recognize and learn how to use. Let's start with tenses, active and passive voice. In today's lesson, I won't explain these topics because I just want to focus on reducing. But I do have 2 complete lessons on these topics, which I'll link down below for you. To help you out today, here's a mini review of active and passive voice. Active. Mark sold his bike. Make the object your subject, and you have the passive voice. Mark's bike was sold. This is what I mean when I say active, passive voice. Okay, let's start. Present simple and past simple active sentences. Reduction rule. remove the relative pronoun and make the verb ing. In your grammar books, verb ing might be called the present participle. That's the present participle. You can see the first two are the present simple and the second two are past simple. Students who study regularly improve their English faster. I don't like food that contains too much sugar. Volunteers who helped from 9 to 12 got a free lunch. Raccoons. Raccoons that came to our house ate from our bird feeder. How do we reduce these? Reduction rule. Remove the relative pronoun and make the verb ing, the present participle. Students studying regularly. Food containing too much sugar. Volunteers helping. And finally, raccoons coming to our house. But when we use the present or past simple, we are speaking about a duration or repeated actions like a habit. From 9 to 12 is a duration. Study regularly contains raccoons that came. Tell us something is regular or repeated. It happened more than once. We cannot reduce a one-time action or the meaning changes a little bit. One-time action. I was so excited to get an autograph from a swimmer who won an Olympic gold medal. This is done. Completed. He won the medal last month. And an autograph. Autograph is the signature from a famous person. This signature is given to their fans. Have you ever gotten the autograph of someone famous? I haven't. Yet. If I reduce this to from a swimmer winning an Olympic gold medal, it makes it sound as if he is winning it now. And this is confusing because if he is winning now, how is he giving me his autograph? A lot of times with grammar, it's not just about rules, it's also about the feeling and logic. Passive voice. Reduction rule. Remove the relative pronoun and the be form. Remember the be forms? Packages that are sent before noon arrive the next day. This picture, which was taken 5 years ago, is starting to fade. And the verb fade means becomes less clear. Here is the original picture, and here it is fading. And just like me, I'm fading. I'm fading. Now I'm back. How do we reduce these? Remove the relative pronoun and be form. Packages sent before noon. This picture, taken 5 years ago, is starting to fade. Present continuous and past continuous active. Reduction rule. Remove the relative pronoun and be form. All passengers who are waiting to board flight A22 can now come forward. An influencer who was taking pictures caused a traffic jam. We can remove the relative pronoun and the be form. All passengers waiting to board flight A22 and an influencer taking pictures caused a traffic jam. Present continuous and past continuous passive. Reduction rule. Remove the relative pronoun and be form. Patients that are being treated in this hospital all deserve the highest standard of care. A painting which was being restored in the museum somehow caught on fire. Patients being treated and a painting being restored. What about other tenses? You may see other tenses, but these are the most common forms when we reduce relative clauses. These are the most common tenses. If you learn these, you are good to go. Next category. Reducing relative clauses with prepositional phrases. What's a prepositional phrase? This just means has a preposition plus a few words, like on the floor, under my table, inside the box, across the street, in room 12, below sea level, onto the balcony, etc. Here are 3 sentences with a prepositional phrase in the relative clause. Visitors who are from the US can go to room A. And you might see this in a hotel. Towels that are on the bathroom floor will be washed. The birds that were on the roof flew away when it started to rain. How can we reduce these sentences? You guessed it, remove the relative pronoun and the be form. I think you're starting to get the idea. Visitors from the US can go to room A. Towels on the bathroom floor will be washed. The birds on the roof flew away when it started to rain. I know there's been a lot of information in today's lesson so far, but we just have one more point to go, so I'm not going to let you leave yet. See, this is one of my students trying to escape my lesson. Not going to happen. There's still more to learn. Reduced relative clauses with adjectives. Any adjective? No, there are common adjectives we use. Available, left as in remaining, present, responsible, involved, needed, and located. Here are 6 sentences. Yep, remove the relative pronoun and be. The booking form said fully booked, but Jeff said there were a lot of seats that were available. There were a lot of seats available. You'd better grab a cookie. There are only a few that are left in the break room. Only a few left in the break room. In this example, you can see that I didn't repeat the word cookie because it's already clear. Several members who were present voiced their concerns. Several members present. The engineer who is responsible for the malfunction has been notified. The engineer responsible for the malfunction. The children who were involved in the incident were taken to the nurse's office. The children involved in the incident. And last one, the fire extinguisher that is located on the 2nd floor needs to be brought down to the 1st floor. The fire extinguisher located on the 2nd floor. And again, these are common adjectives used in this way. We can't choose any adjective. The flowers which are dead can be thrown away. The flowers dead can be thrown away? No. Test time. Are you ready? How do you feel? I have 10 sentences here. Can you please reduce each one? Think about what you need to change. Think about what you need to remove. Pause the lesson to do this. And here are the answers. How did you do? Can you please leave me your score in the comments below? I really do love hearing from you. This is not an easy topic. It is an advanced grammar topic. But if you've improved your knowledge on this topic by just 10%, I am happy. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to make another lesson for you. See you next time.